Marvel fans, hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butt.
We just got some more insane leaks and reports all about Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. These updates fill you in on the ongoing drama between Sony and Marvel and what's actually going to be happening with the movie. But there's also a bit here that teases this film doing something incredibly dark, like way more dark than I thought Marvel was willing to go with Tom Holland Spider-Man. This stuff's crazy freaking awesome, man. I can't wait to get into it. Let's break it down. So first up, let's talk logistics. As you will recall, there have been a lot of debates between Sony and Marvel behind the scenes when it comes to Tom Holland Spider-Man 4. This is, of course, because Sony still technically holds the license to the Spider-Man character, so Marvel has to work with Sony in order to make Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. And if you've been following along with all the rumors and news with us, you will recall that one of the major conflicts was around the director. And as we reported a couple of weeks ago, it appears that Marvel has kind of won on that issue, as it was rumored that Marvel wanted a new director and didn't want to go back to John Watts for this fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man film. And according to new reports from Jeff Insider, they are looking at two new possible directors for Spider-Man 4, one of them being Justin Lin, who is most known for his work on the Fast and the Furious franchise, and the other is Drew Goddard. Now, Drew Goddard would be an interesting choice because he actually wrote on the Netflix Daredevil series. He directed Cabin in the Woods, and he's said to have also had uncredited writing work done on the Age of Ultron movie and the original Avengers film. So it seems that Marvel did win on that side. You're not going to have John Watts returning to direct Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, and instead you might be looking at Drew Goddard or Justin Lin. And I actually like both directing choices for different reasons, but we'll get into that later in the video. Let's just keep going on the news. Next up, let's talk about the release of this movie. And if you will remember back to those other reports about Sony and Marvel having disagreements, one of the things that Sony really wanted was this movie out ASAP. Well, apparently Sony won on this one, as the movie is set to start filming between September and October of this year. And again, this is coming from Jeff Snyder. It was also seemingly backed up by Alex Perez, who retweeted it earlier today. And so you will be getting Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland way faster than I think a lot of people thought. But as I was telling you guys weeks ago, like, that's just how negotiations work. Like, Marvel's gonna win on some stuff, Sony's gonna win on some stuff. That's just called negotiating. Now, the next crazy thing here is all about Zendaya returning to the role of MJ in this movie. And apparently, she's not only coming back, but they're so committed to her coming back that she said she couldn't actually go film Euphoria season 3. This is also coming from Jeff Snyder. It's kind of a speculative part in his article, but he's suggesting that Sony and Marvel want Zendaya back so badly that they are essentially going to go kill that show Euphoria, because Euphoria season 3 has been delayed indefinitely. Now, from a business perspective, this of course makes sense. Zendaya's stock is on the rise. Dune was a big success. I think blew her up even more. She's got a lot of other things going on, so Zendaya's kind of a star now. But I think this also just shows the story a little bit here, right? Like, to have MJ be this important to this film is really interesting. It implies that they might undo the spell from Spider-Man No Way Home. In fact, that actually perfectly sets up the next thing I want to talk about, which is something that came from Alex Perez on a Q&A that he did over at thecosmiccircus.com. And this is the thing that teases out something crazy dark, something wild, something that, like, I don't even know, guys. It's crazy. Let me explain. For the full context here, I want to do a full reading of the question and Alex's lengthy answer. So this comes from an account known as Arnid, and it says, "Hey Alex, hope you're doing okay, man. Lots of love. I have a few questions regarding Tom's Spider-Man, not just Spider-Man 4, but more so what the character of Peter may appear to be like moving forward. Could we expect him to appear much older and more mature in the next film/films? Will he be that beacon of hope of New York City to help people, as was mentioned in the last film?" And then Alex's answer here is really interesting. He says, "Peter's first trilogy was all about establishing his origin in the MCU. I know people complain about him being a novice and acting childish at times, but that's who he is. He's just 15 when we meet him in Civil War and 17 when No Way Home ends. In Homecoming, Peter wanted to prove himself to be an Avenger alongside Tony, but realized that being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man was better for him. In Infinity War and Endgame, he was forced to rise to the challenge of being an Avenger. In Far From Home, he struggles with establishing himself on his own hero when everyone expects him to be the next Iron Man, and all he wants after everything he's been through is to have a normal moment as Peter Parker. This thread is further explored in No Way Home when his identity is revealed and he learns that Peter Parker and Spider-Man cannot truly coexist without putting the people he loves in danger. This all leads him to the next chapter in his story. The idea now moving forward is to give him a sense of independence. In his mind, Peter Parker is no more, but Spider-Man lives on. Since he has either lost or detached himself from everyone he's ever loved, all he has to keep him going is being Spider-Man, whether the city loves him for it or not. And as the title of Spider-Man continues to consume Peter's life little by little, Peter Parker will take a back seat and continue to fade from existence slowly. This story part can be compared to Robert Pattinson's Batman in The Batman. Okay, so holy shit. Didn't really expect that kind of an answer, but it's kind of interesting, right? So Alex talks about what was established with Peter during his sort of first 3 movies and the Avengers films in the MCU, and then he talks about where that leads him to. And the idea that he's at a place where Robert Pattinson's Batman is, and the Batman is freaking crazy. Okay, that's super dark. Like, to make that comparison is really dark, but then also to talk about how in his mind Peter Parker is no more, but Spider-Man lives on. So this, I don't think Alex is technically saying that the spell itself worked on him, but maybe because so much of our own identity kind of gets wrapped up in the social circle and the people that we are around, the fact that that all goes away just sort of causes Peter himself to slowly forget who he was or who he is, and he just becomes consumed with the idea of being Spider-Man. Again, a very dark, very Batman kind of a way to take the character. But now I want to go back to this idea of Zendaya and MJ being a big part of this movie, and when you juxtapose that against this new report here from Alex, it begins to make a lot more sense, because it kind of feels like the character will be headed in a way where he's losing sight of everything that he once was, and he would need to be reminded of who he was by somebody that loved him. And so maybe MJ will begin to see through the spell, or maybe something will be done to undo the spell to sort of save Peter Parker. So again, I think the point is it kind of makes sense for MJ to be in this movie now, and they're really making it a big part of the personal arc for Peter to kind of forget who he is because of the spell. Again, even if it's not directly because of the spell, it's still an effect of what the spell did, right? So he's reeling with that as well. And I think it just makes perfect sense to have MJ, the person that he loves, be the person to bring him back. It's really interesting, really dark, but kind of cool. Now, this also makes me think about Tobey and Andrew, who I really feel will be in this movie, guys. I know there's been a lot of debate around that. A lot of people saying, no, that's not what it is. A lot of people saying, yeah, I think it is going to happen. And this really all comes down to the desires of Sony and the desires of Marvel. This was another big thing they have been fighting about. Will they go crazy with the multiverse or do street level stuff? And I continue to tell you guys, I've heard a lot of evidence about at least Tobey, maybe Andrew as well, popping up in Spider-Man 4, because I think it's such a big freaking deal for what Sony wants to do. They want that multiversal goodness. And I mean, after the box office performance of like Madam Web and how the tracking is for Craven and all the rest of it, yeah, man, I think they just want another No Way Home, like ASAP, right? And I continue to hear from people behind the scenes that you're likely gonna get Tobey and Andrew in this film. So I think this whole idea of Peter forgetting who he is another great way to establish the multiverse and to bring the Spider Boys back, because they played an important role in kind of shaping Peter, reminding him of who he was and is, and showing like what Peter Parker's out there in the multiverse are like and what they have to deal with. And I think particularly about Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, the fact that he talked about how he was forgetting who he was and stopped pulling his punches and went to a really dark place. Well, if that happens to Tom Holland Peter Parker, I think the other Spider dudes would want to help out. Maybe they could even sense it because of some kind of connection they now have. Who knows? But that's one way that they could bring the multiverse in. I also think, guys, the Sinister Six and this idea of mercenaries, and it's kind of weird how Alex says maybe the city doesn't even like that he's Spider-Man, but he has to be Spider-Man. That kind of reminds me of like Kingpin, Devil's Reign, the fact that Kingpin will likely outlaw vigilantism, but all of a sudden Spider-Man, he's just going to be doing his thing and becoming darker and darker as well, and people are going to kind of turn against him. I mean, it's really, really crazy. And then if you add in the Venom symbiote and the fact that there are rumors that Peter's going to die or go to near death, and then the symbiote's going to actually bond with him and like resurrect him or bring him back to life. Like, this movie's seeming crazy freaking dark, and it seems like they want to take Peter in a really dark direction to set him up for some vicious stuff in Secret Wars and Battle World, but probably ultimately for another arc where he returns back to the light, he returns back to being the Peter that we know. This is a lot and feels like a really important piece of the puzzle as far as like trying to figure out what the heck's going on with Tom Holland Spider-Man. So let me know what you think about all these different updates. What are you thinking about this dark direction that they might be going with Peter Parker in the MCU? And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.